Hello, everyone. My name is Shaylyn Hubbard, and thank you for joining me today to listen in on my honors capstone defense. My project is on food insecurity as a predictor of academic performance among college students, and these are the results from the 2019 Black Hills State University Food Insecurity Survey. So, jumping right in here, what was the purpose of the study? So, the purpose of this study was to understand the prevalence of food insecurity among students at Black Hills State University, specifically on the Spearfish campus, as well as correlates that might contribute to food insecurity. More specifically, one question that wanted to be answered was, does academic performance influence food insecurity in any way? This study is important because an understanding of the issue and further knowledge of the issue can be gained, and this knowledge will lead to a more accurate and a more informed response to the issue of food insecurity. This study stood to further inform and to add to other bodies of evidence regarding the issue of food insecurity on college campuses and the relationship between grades and food insecurity in general. Moving on here, we have the literature review, or evidence that can help gain a further understanding of the study and what food insecurity is, academic performance, and all of the other related correlates and factors regarding food insecurity on college campuses. So food insecurity can be defined in a variety of different ways. However, the most commonly employed definition is defined by the United States Department of Agriculture, or the USDA. Food insecurity, according to the USDA, is the lack of consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy lifestyle. In addition, the USDA also describes different levels of food security. These four levels include high food security, marginal food security, low food security, and very low food security. Those who experience very low food security have limited access to quality food, and they typically experience hunger. Those with low food security lack quality nutrition but experience very little to no hunger. Marginal food security consists of one or two reported occurrences of worry if adequate food can be provided, but they don't experience hunger. And lastly, high food security, which is proper access and ability to obtain adequate nutrition. Food insecurity is a major concern in U.S. households. The USDA reported that in 2019, 97% of households reported worrying whether food would run out before finances would allow them to purchase more. In addition, 94% of households said that they could not afford a healthy diet. 69% indicated being hungry but not eating a meal because of a lack of money, while 36% did not eat for a whole day because of a lack of money for food. It is obvious by this data that food insecurity, or the worry about being or becoming food insecure, is a problem in the US. Food insecurity goes beyond the US as well, and you can look at it more specifically in certain areas like college students, which we did in this study. So not only does food insecurity affect U.S. families and households, but college students and campuses as well. However, research on the prevalence of food insecurity on college campuses is rather limited, though cross-sectional studies find that college students experience rates of food insecurity between 14 to 59% depending on the institution or the college. One study conducted at a rural university in Oregon found that 59% of participants on campus were food insecure. Another study from 2017 found that of more than 30,000 college students from 2 or 4-year colleges, about half of those people were food insecure. An analysis of data from a study of the University of Hawaii at Mana'u found that 21% of students were considered food insecure. Therefore, levels of food insecurity vary on different campuses and universities, but it's still prevalent among many. Research indicates several factors are associated with the cause of food insecurity among college students as well. One cause is that college has become increasingly more expensive. Between 1989 and 2016, the price for a 4-year degree doubled, even after inflation rates were included. In addition to increased college tuition, living expenses have increased as well. Rent, transportation, food, entertainment, and many other expenses have become more expensive, leaving students with very little to no money. Pre-college financial challenges are a challenge for college students, influencing food insecurity as well. Some students come into college with pre-existing debt, and over one-fifth of college students have dependent children that they need to provide for. In 2016, research found that 39% of college students came from poverty-stricken households. Therefore, these students might be responsible for providing financial support at home or having other financial priorities outside of themselves or college. And nearly half of all college students are independent of their parents financially. This means that students pay for all of their college and living expenses, which leads to another factor influencing food insecurity: work. College students typically work for minimum wage or less, and some students even have to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet. This leaves little to no money and making it nearly impossible to afford adequate nutrition. There's also a variety of factors seemingly associated with food insecurity on college campuses. The College of University Food Bank Alliance, or CUFBA, conducted a survey reporting that first-generation college students are more likely to be food insecure than their peers whose parents attended college, and this was 56% versus 45%. Non-white students, more specifically African Americans or Hispanics, are more likely to experience food insecurity on college campuses as well. Campus residence appears to be a correlate of food insecurity. Students living off campus, even with roommates, to split financial responsibilities, experience food insecurity at higher rates than students living on campus. Also, this study done by CUFBA found that 32% of their participants reported academic performance was directly related to their food insecurity status. Even though research is limited, seems to be a valid relationship between academic achievement and food insecurity. Now, continuing and further adding to the discussion concerning grades and food insecurity, the previously mentioned study done at a rural university in Oregon found that there was an inverse relationship between academic performance and food insecurity. More specifically, they found that those who had high grade point averages of 3.1 or higher had lower amounts of food insecurity than students with less than 3.1 GPAs, or grade point averages. Another study found that those with a grade point average of 3.1 or higher were 60% less likely to experience food insecurity than their counterparts. Through data analysis, these studies have found that there is a pretty significant relationship between academic achievement and food insecurity. This information is pretty compelling because it continues to validate and add to body of collected knowledge. And these studies further add to conversation that food insecurity is present on college campuses, and that there is a relationship between academic performance and food insecurity. Now, jumping out of previously conducted research, we're going to move into the research that I conducted on campus, and this is the methods that we used. First, we'll move into our design and sample of our study. This study was gathered from a research methods course at Black Hills State University, designed to examine the prevalence of food insecurity among college students on campus. Respondents were chosen from a proportional quota based on school enrollment, and these schools included business, math and social sciences, behavioral sciences, arts and humanities, natural sciences, and finally, education. However, due to weather conditions, the schools of natural sciences and business were undersampled. In-person surveys containing various questions about food insecurity, demographics, and other correlates such as academic achievement were performed. These surveys were conducted with 330 respondents, and of these 330 respondents, 57.8% were female and 42.2% were males, and the most reported age of respondents was 20 years old. And concerning ethnicity, 82.9% were Caucasian, and 17.1% reported as non-white. Now, further discussing the procedures of this study, this face-to-face survey was approved by the Black Hills State University Institutional Review Board. And this sample is a non-probability sample where individuals were not given an equal opportunity to be selected. And once again, participants were selected by a proportional quota where school was the selected quota. However, we do recognize that several limitations did arise as a result of this study. Again, as mentioned earlier, the schools of business and natural sciences were undersampled. Absences from these classes are also considered a limitation. Students taking these classes, might not have had a major in that particular school, so that's another limitation as well. And we only administered one item concerning academic achievement, and that's recognized as a limitation. And lastly, students unsure of their academic achievement would be a limitation as well. Wrapping up the methods section of this presentation and of this study, we are going to talk about the measure of food insecurity and the measure of academic achievement. Levels of food insecurity or food security are determined by the USDA 6-item, 10-item, or 18-item scales. And each number in these scales refers to the number of questions specifically asking about food insecurity. And in this study, we used the USDA 10-item index scale to measure food insecurity. Affirmative responses to these questions generated a +1 score, while negative responses generated a +0 score. And these scores were then used to establish a food insecurity index and a food insecurity status. Those with a score of 0 were considered to have high food security. Scores of 1 to 2 yielded marginal food security. Scores of 3 to 5 yielded low food security. And finally, scores of 6 to 10 yielded very low food security. Moving on, we talk about academic achievement. And academic achievement was measured with one item. And the definition of academic achievement or academic performance relies upon the items used to measure it. And in this study, the indicator would be grades received. Respondents were asked how they would describe their grades, and they were asked to choose from mostly A's, mostly B's, mostly C's, mostly D's, mostly F's, and not sure. Now, we're going to move on to the results. What were the results, and did we actually find anything of relevance or significant relationships in this study? Here we have the frequency distribution of grades. Table 1 shows the frequency distribution of academic achievement. 43.8% of respondents reported receiving mostly A's. 39.4% reported mostly B's. 13.7% reported mostly C's. 3.1% reported mostly D's. And 2.4% were not sure what their grades were. Here we have most respondents self-reporting a high amount of academic achievement, while very few reported low academic achievement. Here we have Table 2, which shows the frequency distribution of food insecurity index. The majority of participants, 41.2%, yielded a raw score of 0. 18.6% yielded a score of 1. 6.4% a score of 2. 7.7% yielded a raw score of 3. 6.1% yielded a score of 4. 4.2% yielded a score of 5. Going on, we have 3.5% yielding a score of 6, 7.1% a score of 7, 3.9% a score of 8, 1% a score of 9, and 0.3% a score of 10. From this data, 41.2% of students report high food security, 25.1% of students have marginal food security, 18% of students have low food security, and 15.7% of students have very low food security or very high food insecurity. Table 3 shows a one-way analysis of variance, or a one-way ANOVA, to test for significant differences in average food security index score between different letter grade samples. The alpha, or the p-value in this case, is 0.001, which is less than the set p-value of 0.05. Therefore, differences are significant between the two variables, which is important to recognize here. This means that there is indeed a correlation between academic achievement and food insecurity. Furthermore, students reporting mostly C's had significantly high food insecurity than those with mostly A's. This suggests that students with lower academic achievement experience higher rates of food insecurity. And lastly, here we have Table 4, which shows an independent samples test, or a t-test, testing for the differences between mean food insecurity index scores and yes and no responses regarding the inability to afford food negatively impacting education. 250 students reported no, while 59 students reported yes to the inability to afford food negatively impacting their academic performance. The mean food insecurity index score of these students who responded no was 1.58, equating to marginal food security. The mean food insecurity index scores of students who reported yes was 4.54, which yields to low food security. Therefore, students who reported lack of finances to purchase food impacting their education in a negative way experienced more food insecurity than students who believed it had little to no impact on their education. Now let's have a little bit of discussion on what this means and what we should talk about moving on in this study and what we should talk about in the future. Using an in-person survey approach during the study, we did find that academic achievement is linked to food insecurity. Hypothesis testing suggests that those with lower letter grades are more likely to be food insecure, while those with higher letter grades are more likely to be food secure. Testing did show an interesting finding between receiving mostly C's and food insecurity index scores. The one-way ANOVA showed that those who reported receiving mostly C's on average scored a 3.43 on the food security index, while those who reported mostly D's scored an average of 2.94. This shows that the differences are not as straightforward as we expected, though more testing must be conducted to further support this conclusion. This study also adds to the body of evidence that there is a significant relationship between grades received and food insecurity. However, this could be due to food insecurity impacting academic achievement rather than academic achievement impacting food insecurity. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a physiological theory that explains human motivations. And according to this theory, if you cannot meet each level of the hierarchy, you can never reach your full potential. Food is a basic physiological need that should be met in the first level of this hierarchy. That raises the question of whether individuals can even achieve academic success if they cannot even meet basic needs. In addition, the discussion of intervention and resources for college students experiencing food insecurity needs to be discussed as well. Food pantries are an excellent way to provide food to college students on college campus. On-campus food pantries exist on over 200 U.S. campuses, and the Trinity Washington University reported that close to 150 of their students used the food pantry in the 2017-2018 academic year. However, food pantries are one of the only interventions employed on college campuses, and the president of Trinity Washington University, Patricia McGuire, said that beyond food pantries, higher education needs substantial changes in the structure of food service for low-income students as well as traditional students saddled with rising cost of attendance. Really, more needs to be done for students on college campuses to help with food insecurity. Equally important here, awareness needs to be increased on college campuses as well. Students should be taught about food insecurity. It is important for students to recognize food insecurity among themselves and even other students in order to improve intervention methods. Awareness of on-campus resources needs to improve as well. In the BHSU Food Insecurity Survey, respondents were asked whether they were aware that there was a food pantry on the BHSU Spearfish campus, and the results of here were pretty interesting. From this survey, we found that 65.5% of respondents were completely unaware of the existence of an on-campus food pantry at BHSU. This is extremely concerning that students are unaware of a beneficial service that can help prevent food insecurity. Marketing must be addressed so that every student is aware of on-campus resources and intervention if we want something to be done with food insecurity. So in conclusion, we did get the results that we were looking for in this study. We did find a better understanding of food insecurity on the Black Hills State University Spearfish campus, and we did find a relationship between academic performance and food insecurity among students as well. However, further research must be conducted. This is an issue that needs to be looked into further to gain better knowledge and to find better ways to intervene and find resources to help students on college campuses. And fortunately enough, Dr. Trenton Ellis, a professor at BHSU, in his Research Methods 2 course, he will continue to conduct this survey to further look into food insecurity on campus. So check that out in the future, see what's going on there, see the knowledge that is gained through these surveys. So thank you so much for joining me on my Honors Camp Self-Defense. I hope you learned a little bit about food insecurity and how it impacts Spearfish students. And once again, thank you.